Welcome back to our channel. Today we'll revisit the Battle of Gettysburg. The Battle of Gettysburg was a pivotal moment in the American Civil War and one of the bloodiest battles in the history of the United States. It took place in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania from July 1st to 3rd in 1863 and lasted 3 days. In this video, we will take a deep dive into the background, the battle itself, and the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg. The American Civil War was a conflict that took place between 1861 and 1865. It was fought between the Northern states, also known as the Union, and the Southern states, known as the Confederacy. The main cause of the war was the disagreement over slavery and states' rights. The Southern states believed that they had the right to secede from the Union and form their own government, while the Northern states believed in maintaining the unity of the country. In addition to the issue of slavery, there were also economic and cultural differences between the North and South. The North was industrialized and focused on manufacturing and trade, while the South was primarily agricultural and relied heavily on slave labor. The North was also more supportive of public education and abolitionist movements, while the South was more conservative and opposed to these ideas. The conflict began on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces attacked the Union-held Fort Sumter in South Carolina. This act of aggression sparked a full-scale war between the North and South, with both sides raising armies and engaging in numerous battles and skirmishes. The American Civil War was one of the deadliest wars in American history, and it had a profound impact on the country and its people. The Battle of Gettysburg was fought from July 1 to July 3, 1863, and is considered one of the most important battles of the American Civil War. Day 1 of the Battle of Gettysburg on July 1, 1863, was the start of what would become one of the most significant battles of the American Civil War. It was a day of skirmishes and engagements as Confederate forces under General Robert E. Lee encountered Union forces under General John Buford near the town of Gettysburg. Buford had arrived in Gettysburg with his cavalry division the day before, and he quickly realized that the town would be a crucial crossroads in the battle. He positioned his troops on the high ground to the west of the town, with the intention of delaying the Confederate advance. Throughout the day, Confederate forces attempted to push through Buford's defenses and gain control of the high ground. They encountered strong resistance, and the skirmishes and engagements lasted well into the afternoon. One of the key events of the day was the fighting at McPherson's Ridge and Herbst Woods, where Confederate forces attempted to flank the Union lines and gain control of the high ground. Despite initial success, Union forces were able to hold their ground and repel the Confederate attack. By the end of the day, Union forces had established a defensive line on Cemetery Hill and Cemetery Ridge, which would become the focus of the Confederate attack over the next 2 days. Despite the heavy losses on both sides, the Union Army had successfully delayed the Confederate advance and positioned themselves for the upcoming battle. Day 2 of the battle was a day of intense and brutal fighting. Confederate General Robert E. Lee made the decision to launch a full-scale attack on the Union positions on Cemetery Hill and Cemetery Ridge, hoping to break through and gain control of the high ground. The first attack came in the morning when Confederate General James Longstreet led a massive assault on the Union left flank. The fighting was intense and lasted for hours, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Despite the ferocity of the attack, Union forces were able to hold their ground and repel the Confederate advance. Later in the day, Confederate General Richard Ewell launched a second attack on the Union right flank, hoping to turn the tide of the battle. The fighting was equally intense, but once again the Union forces were able to hold their ground and repel the Confederate attack. One of the most memorable moments of the day was Pickett's charge, a massive Confederate assault led by General George Pickett on the center of the Union line. The attack was a last-ditch effort to break through the Union defenses and gain control of the high ground. Despite the bravery of the Confederate soldiers, the attack was a failure and resulted in heavy losses for the Confederate Army. By the end of the day, the Confederate Army had suffered significant losses and was unable to break through the Union defenses. Despite their bravery and determination, the Confederate forces were unable to gain control of the high ground and the battle had reached a stalemate. The stage was set for the final and decisive day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Day 3 was the final and decisive day of the battle. Confederate General Robert E. Lee made the decision to launch a final attack on the center of the Union line, hoping to break through and gain control of the high ground. The attack was known as Pickett's Charge, named after Confederate General George Pickett, who led the charge. The attack began in the late morning and involved over 12,000 Confederate soldiers marching across open fields towards the center of the Union line. The Union Army was waiting for the attack and unleashed a barrage of artillery fire on the Confederate soldiers, causing heavy casualties. Despite the overwhelming firepower of the Union Army, the Confederate soldiers continued to march forward, determined to reach the Union line. When the Confederate soldiers finally reached the Union line, they were met with fierce resistance and hand-to-hand combat broke out. Despite their bravery and determination, the Confederate soldiers were unable to break through the Union defenses and the attack was a failure. The Confederate Army suffered heavy losses in the attack, with over 50% of the soldiers involved in the charge being killed, wounded, or captured. With their army depleted and morale shattered, Confederate General Robert E. Lee was forced to retreat from Gettysburg and the Union Army had won the decisive victory of the battle. The Battle of Gettysburg was a turning point in the American Civil War. The Confederate Army suffered significant losses, and General Lee was forced to retreat back to Virginia. The Union Army's victory at Gettysburg was a morale boost for the North and helped secure their control of Pennsylvania. The battle was also the deadliest of the Civil War, with over 50,000 soldiers losing their lives. The Battle of Gettysburg was a defining moment in the American Civil War and had lasting effects on the outcome of the conflict. It was a testament to the bravery and determination of both Union and Confederate soldiers and serves as a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who fought for their beliefs. The battlefield at Gettysburg is now a national park and is visited by millions of people each year, who come to pay their respects to the fallen soldiers and to learn about this important piece of American history. We hope that you found this video informative and educational. If you enjoyed this episode of History Hub, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical content. And as always, we welcome your questions and feedback. Thank you for watching.